Thanks for joining us, and welcome back to the Watchman on the Wall podcast. Periodically, we'll bring you true stories of angelic encounters, heavenly visitations, near-death experiences, as well as modern-day prophecies that are relevant to us today. When we come back, we'll begin our next episode. If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. And here's the best part, it's completely free. Anchor has a creation tool that will allow you to record and edit your podcast. This can be done right from your phone or computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you. This will allow it to be heard on Spotify, Apple, and many more. Now you can even add a song from Spotify to your podcast. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's the easiest way to make a podcast. So take a minute to download the Anchor app or just go to anchor.fm to get started. Hello again and welcome back. Today we have a special treat on our podcast today. We're going to highlight two different individuals and their near-death experiences. I personally love these stories, especially the ones of people that have gone to heaven and have come back with amazing stories. Today we have two people that are going to tell that story in their own words. Now today we're going to start off with a lady named Tricia Barker. Now she was agnostic when she suddenly died. Here now is her story in her own words.
I was an agnostic college student on my way to run the Austin 10K. And unfortunately, I had this head-on collision on my way to run the race. And I broke my back in three places. The spine was compromised and three vertebrae were completely shattered. Pieces of the bone were pressing on my spine. I waited in the ER for 17 hours. I remember reading 17% chance of death. I thought, nah, I'm young, I'm strong, I was about to run a race. There's no way I'm dying. So you can imagine my horror and my excitement and my joy when indeed I did die on that operating table. And being agnostic, I assumed that, we just became nothing. That when we died, there was nothing. Maybe our energy dissipated into the grass, and the trees, and the earth, and that was it. So when I had this deeper intelligence as a spirit, I was shocked because I placed so much emphasis on my brain that when my spirit form lifted out of my body, I was like, oh, I'm so clear. This is truly the true me. This spirit form is me. That body on the table is just a bloody piece of meat that they're operating on that I use as something to take me through this life. But the real me is the spirit. And it was so clear over there, like in those first few seconds. My intelligence felt more heightened immediately. I felt like I could see the entire room. I could see what the surgeons were doing. I could observe a lot and understand a lot of information all at one time. And, we're not limited by eyes that look straight ahead. When we're the spirit form, we can just see everything. Then I saw these angels at the foot of the bed, and I didn't call them angels. And I still, I'm comfortable calling them light beings because they were composed of light. So if you imagine just this flowing energy, it looked kind of like robes. I didn't really see wings. If there were wings behind them, they were just part of this flowing robe, but they looked ancient. They looked incredibly intelligent. They did have a human face and this kind of curly hair that was about shoulder length, but they really could have been male or female. I just looked at them and they were beautiful. The main thing is that their eyes were made of this light, and they communicated with telepathy through their eyes. And that's the part that really got me. I remember thinking, wow, this light not only communicates to me, but it's sending this healing into my spirit form and healing into my physical body. And I remember thinking, those neurosurgeons, I bet they don't realize that the angels are assisting them, because the angels very playfully said, watch this. And they sent this light through the back of the surgeons, through their hands, and it lit up my entire body. And I knew that I'd walk. I knew that I'd run. I knew that I'd have a life after this. And I knew that it was partially because of their assistance. And, this was the 1990s. So you have to imagine that, Reiki is kind of common knowledge, that people use angelic realms to help people heal. At that time, I'd never heard of it. So this looked like the most far out scene, I've ever seen in my life. I thought, wow. So this intelligence is working through the neurosurgeons for my benefit. How amazing is that? The next part of the near-death experience occurred when the monitor flatlined, and we've all heard that sound. And that beep, I knew meant my body was dead, and it looked a little gruesome already. My back was open, and they also had my hip opened up because they were taking bone from my hip and putting it into my back. And I remember thinking, I don't think I want to watch how they're going to revive me. This is not going to be pretty. This is going to be really ugly. So I left the operating room. And when I was in the hallway, I observed my stepdad get a candy bar. And this became a verifiable detail later. But, in the moment, I just remember thinking, oh, that's funny. Thought he was a health nut. He's eating a Snickers bar. And moved on from the moment. But I hoped that he might be kind to my mom in case I didn't come back. So even though the angels told me I'd walk and run again, I think there was this embrace of the spirit form. And immediately it's like I was trying to take control of that and go, I don't really have to return, do I? This can be just my reality from this point forward. The parts of the near-death experience that changed me the most was the next few parts, which was this feeling of oneness with everyone I've known. And I think in these particular times, we need more of that. We need this understanding that what does all of this matter in 50 or 100 years? What matters is how kind we are to those around us. And this can include even people at a grocery store or a barista or anyone in our classes or people we work with, that we're connected energetically, that we're more of there's this oneness of energy that flows through all of humanity. And when you're unkind to people, it reflects back to you in certain ways. So I felt this just like general love for everyone that I'd ever known, and really kind of got it that when we leave here, all that we're taking with us is this kind of wish for humanity to do well, to be better, to be happy. Then I transitioned through that. Some people call it a tunnel, or it was very quick for me. I was just in the night sky. And I looked out and I saw all these beautiful stars and this light. I wasn't afraid. There wasn't a single moment where I was afraid in this experience. And that's what I want people to understand, is that a lot of people live in fear of death when they're in the physical body. I understand that. But once you're there, it's not that scary. It's just another reality. And so in that place, I felt the intelligence of God coming toward me. God showed me my life. I relived certain moments that were most important to me were the moments where I was kind or I was in touch with God. Then God showed me that I should be perhaps better to people. At 22, I was a little judgmental, cliquish, and looked down on some people who actually prayed for me. I didn't like them because they didn't go to my college. They didn't go to college at all. And so I just thought I didn't have anything in common with them. But it turns out their hearts and souls were very beautiful. And I could see this on the other side. And I was embarrassed by how I had acted. And I thought, from this point forward, I'm not judging people superficially. I'm looking at their hearts. Who are they? What is their true motivation in life? And are they good to others? And I think, now that lesson is played out so many times. There's so many manipulative people on this planet, and so many people who don't come from that pure-hearted place. And I think God was showing me there are some people who come from that pure-hearted place, and find them and make them your friends. And so I saw that very clearly, and then moved on to this beautiful landscape where the grass was beautiful. It was so deeply green, as if nothing had ever touched it. There was no death, no harm. Everything was just vibrant with life. And my soul kind of hovered above this place. I began to hear messages as I was entering heaven, like, love is all that matters, all that we take with us, be like a little child. These particular messages seemed simple, though, and I remember honestly having a moment of, like, oh God, please give me more. If I'm coming back, I need something more than a Beatles slogan of love is all that matters. Like, maybe you need to give me some formulas or some gifts or something, you know, like, this is not enough. Love is all that matters. But what I saw is that when I met my grandfather, he was part of the unconditional love that I'd experienced in life, and he was the only person who had transitioned. When I saw him, he gave me great peace, and I thought, well, all I have is the memories of love with him. I don't have the memories in that place of his dying form, of what he looked like when he had leukemia. I just remember his soul's desire to write stories to me, to connect with me, to be that loving grandfather, to be that figure in my life that showed me that I was important. And that was beautiful. That's all that we had in that realm, was the love that we had experienced. When he looked at me and he said, do you want to continue on? I knew this meant go to the light of God. So I just flew. My soul just like went towards, and God looked like this bright light. But it was more than a light. It was intelligence. It was magnet. It was something that changed me. I can't describe how shocking it was. I'd never experienced love like that before, only pieces, like through my grandfather, through parents, through friends. But this was like, I call it an atomic bomb of love, because it was so massive. It just hit me, and I thought, wow, in physical form, we spend so much of our time not loving ourselves, not being happy with this circumstance, feeling anxious, we just spend so much of our time not really understanding that we're connected to the greatest love that we can imagine, and that we can all feel okay. We can all feel this bliss, that this is kind of our divine right and what we deserve, no matter how we've been treated in childhood, no matter what we've experienced. Every single one of us can connect to this love. I felt people's prayers trying to pull me back, and I just remember breaking through them, going, whatever, you know, like I'm going towards God. God's awesome. And as I got closer and closer to God, I didn't want to come back here. This place didn't seem interesting after experiencing God. I thought, I very much want to keep merging with God, going into that light and going into that beauty. At some point I was stopped, and God said with this booming voice, look down. And when I looked down, I saw this river, which I thought was like a river of life. You know, those people walking along in time. And I saw that some people had darkness around them, and some people were just lights, and they were connected to that light of God. Even though God was far away from them, they had that connection. And I thought, what is that darkness? And it looked so simple. It looked like, I could just remind people to connect to God, and that's all that they'll need. It didn't look complicated, like there are murderers down there, or there are people doing really horrible things. It just looked like there's fear, and then there's a connection to God. And that's all there is. And so when God said, I'm going to work as a teacher, I was upset. That was not what I wanted to do with my life. I'd grown up poor. I thought, no way, no, and let's just stay here or give me a different mission. And God almost laughed at me, and that's when I was hurled back into my body. Why do we come here? I mean, that's a good question. I think our souls are almost like journeyers or warriors. You know, we're trying to learn something in a dramatic way by coming here. And those of us who remember it we've won in a sense. It's like, no matter what happens from this point forward, it's like, we won, we got it, we remembered, we're loved, we're going to mess up, but we're going to do the best that we can from here on.
We'll be right back with part 2 of our podcast right after this. Hello again, this is the Watchman. Please join us each week for an exciting and inspirational podcast dealing with angel encounters, heavenly visitations, near-death experiences, as well as modern-day prophecies that are relevant to us today. So tune in each week and share it with your friends. After all, they could use a little inspiration in their life, too. That's the Watchman on the Wall podcast, and now you can find us on YouTube. Please join us on the Watchman News Network. It's a video news presentation of relevant stories dealing with end-time topics. Just subscribe to the Watchman on the Wall podcast on YouTube, and you will instantly have access to our latest WNN report. That's the Watchman News Network, exclusively found on YouTube. Now, our next near-death experience story comes from a man named Dean Braxton. Here now is his story in his own words.
I'm Dean Braxton, and I have a story of dying and going to heaven. I was working in the Seattle area, working for the county there, King County, and I was a supervisor in the probation department of the juvenile courts. So I was loving my job. I enjoyed working with adolescents. I used to say all the time, I would do it until the day I died, and then I died. May 5th, 2006. I ended up with a kidney stone that got stuck on the right side. I had kidney stones before, so I knew it was a kidney stone right out the bat. I thought I could probably wait it out or go through it and it would kind of like the pain would go away, but that time it didn't go away. And I remember going into the emergency room and just kind of like nonchalant say, I got a kidney stone, it's over here. And I knew what they would do because I've been through the procedures before, and I knew they would take me into a room and they would give me morphine and the pain would go away. I also had a kidney infection, and they gave me antibiotics for that kidney infection, and they decided they would keep me overnight and they would do the operation. And so that kept overnight, gave me antibiotics. The operation the next day went pretty smoothly. They broke up the stones, but they also, what happened, and they found out later on, that I was one of those persons that the antibiotics they gave to didn't really impact the infection that I had. So when they broke up the stones, the poison went into my bloodstream, and I became what you call septic, and everything in my body started shutting down, not just my heart and my lungs. According to the medical records, I was considered clinically dead for about an hour and 45 minutes. But one of the things that really got me is even the process of even the dying piece. When it really came down to it and I knew I was dying, I was surprised how much fear I didn't have. I'm born again, a Christian, and I knew that you go to heaven when you die, and I was looking forward to it. Even when I realized I was dying, and I said to myself, I'm dying. And all I could say after that was, I'm going home. I remember leaving my body and really shooting through the hospital floors and even going into the blue sky. And I remember going into outer space, and it was really fast. I used to always try to figure out how fast it was. And I do read my Bible, and I remember reading this one scripture that says to be absent from the body is to be in the presence of the Lord. And all I could say was, that was it, that was it, that was it. That's what really happened. I was moving that fast. I would say faster than a person could blink their eye. By the time the top eyelid hits the bottom one, I was already in heaven. That's how fast it was. As I was going into that realm, and I remember seeing before me that they saw like a light at the end of the tunnel because it's really dark in this one area there. And I can remember it wasn't a light just like at the end of a tunnel. To me, it was like a window. It looked like a window. I'm not saying it was a window, but that's the best way description I could say. As I was going toward this light that was before me, it looked like a window. I remember when I came in through that window, oh man, everything was right. There was nothing wrong. It was peace. There was nothing that would agitate you there, nothing that would get on your nerves. And the thing that got me more than anything else is I fit. I didn't know how out of place I felt before until I went through this experience, because I went in and I fit. I knew I was welcome there. Everything in heaven was welcoming me there. Everything. I'm not just saying God Almighty or Jesus Christ or the Holy Spirit. I'm saying everything in heaven literally was glad I was there. And I felt it by looking at everything around me. There were trees there. I felt welcome from the trees. I looked at flowers. They seemed to welcome me. Everything there was so glad I had showed up. One of the things I wanted more than anything else, and I didn't even know this desire was on the inside of me until really I got there, and that was I really just didn't want to be in heaven. You know, I wanted to see Jesus Christ. I wanted to see him face to face. That was so important to me. Heaven's not heaven without the Father and Jesus. They make up heaven, you know, and I came to understand it's not a place you want to be in, it's a person you want to be with. So as I was going through a forest, there was a forest before me, a bunch of trees in front of me, and I knew Jesus Christ was through those trees. And I remember thinking that I got to go through those trees to see where he is. Then as I was going through those trees behind me, they parted before me. And I felt like they were saying on both sides of me, he's going to see the king, he's going to see the king, he's going to see the king. That's what I felt like they were saying. I wanted to be where Jesus is. So I was really concentrating more than anything else on being where he is. And when I came through, I remember coming out into this clearing, but it was a wide open space. And I saw Jesus. He was more to the left of me, and he was looking at a bunch of some angels and some what I call redeemed people that had been on the planet and left the planet and went to heaven. And I can remember coming up to him and seeing him. And the first thing I did, I didn't stand up and really approach him. I got so close to him, and then I went down on my hands and knees, and I was looking at his feet. When I say I was looking at his feet, he was still facing the multitude of the crowd before him, and there was millions of them, billions of them, really. You know, I was looking at the side of his feet, and all I could do is I kind of raised my head up enough to see part of his legs, never really his face at that moment. And all I could say was, you did this for me. And everything inside of me, everything about me at that moment knew that the only reason I was in heaven is because of what Jesus Christ had done. Everything was so grateful in my being that he had done that for me, that the next thing I could only do was say, thank you, 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 thank you. So I'm thanking him, and as I'm thanking him, I stopped, and then I said, oh, the only reason I'm here is because of what he had done. Mentally, I knew he had done it for everyone, but personally, I took it on as so personal that you not only died on the cross so that I could be here, but you created all of heaven just for me. I don't want to say I was being selfish, because I wasn't, but that's what I felt like. He had done it just for me. For then I started looking up his body. I looked up from his feet to his ankles. His ankles loved me. I saw his calves. They loved me. I saw his knees. They loved me. Everything about him I looked at loved me. His hands, they loved me. And then I got to his face, and he looked at me. And this is what really, one of the things that still to this day is one of the things I'll go back to every once in a while and just grab. He looked at me like I never, ever disobeyed him in my entire existence. You know, that really got me. And then I thought about it later on, that when he said he forgive you, he forgets it. You know, I read the Bible, and the Bible even says that in the 8th chapter of Hebrews and also the 10th chapter of Hebrews. It literally says that when God forgives you, he forgets it. I experienced that look from Jesus. I knew that I was the eternal being, that I would never die. My body died, but me, the real person on the inside of this body, will never die. The love he had for me would outlast me. It can't outlast me, because I'll live forever. After that engagement with him and he downloading some things inside of me, I call it downloading like a computer. He looks at me and he says, no, it's not your time. Go back. But like that, that's how he says it. I was kind of okay with it. And I remember I didn't go through the forest after that to go back to where I came into heaven. I went over the forest. It's like I flew over it. There is not really flying. You can literally say, I want to be 10 feet above the surface there. The best way I could describe it to you that read your Bible is like when Jesus walked on water. And there's no fear, so you can go as high as you want. But I remember going over the trees and going back to that place. And when I got to the place that I was going to leave out of, and it wasn't like there's a door there that open up the door and you go out. It was just like I knew the next step I took, I would be out of that realm. And I remember standing there for a while and I sensed my body wasn't ready. It wasn't ready. I was so joyful that it wasn't ready. So I remember turning around saying, yes. And the forest was before me, and I knew Jesus was on the other side of the forest, but I felt like I could literally go to the left of the forest. And as I'm going to the left of the forest, oh man, all of creation is so joyful. I saw mountains, and they were beautiful mountains. They looked like ocean waves moving because they could move. And as they were moving, it looked like the ocean waves going past me, but they were really mountains going. And I just, oh man, this is so wonderful. And I'm enjoying it because, to be honest with you, I thought I was going to stay. I knew I had to get back to Jesus. So I came back to Jesus this time around this side of him. And for whatever reason, I went behind him and then came back to that same position I did the first time. And I bowed down again before him. And then he said some more things to me, talked to me a little bit more about things there. And I remember the light that was coming off of him. I didn't say this the first time, but there was this great light that was coming off of him. And it was wrapping itself around me. After that engagement, he looks at me again. He looks down at me again with these beautiful, loving eyes. He says to me again, no, it's not your time. Go back. The second time, I was, oh man, I go over the trees again. I get to that edge part of where I came in at, and it looked like I take one more step and I'm out. I get ready to get out, and all of a sudden, again, I know my body is not ready. And I'm thinking, yes, I am staying. So the next thing I do is this time, instead of going to the left of me, I go to the right of that forest, and I experience so many great things. It seemed like that side was more of the liquids, like the water, the seas, the rivers. I don't know why they were over on that side, but they were on this. They were more blue, but that blue, like we would say blue, because the colors are there are more vibrant than you can imagine. I travel through, I see things, I experience some things. I've seen a lot of different animals on that side. You know, there's a lot of animals in heaven. And then I get right back to Jesus. And this was, oh man. They were always there. I don't know why I didn't recognize them. Here again, I go back to the same spot I went to before with Jesus. And I'm looking at his feet, then I look up, and on the other side of him, I see my family. I see my grandmother Mary standing out front. She's on a group over on this side over here, and she's standing out front. And then behind her were other relatives, and then behind them were relatives. And it was generation after generation of all those that had a connection with Jesus Christ and the Father, and they came to greet me in. Now, I know they were there the first time I was there with Jesus. I know they were there the second time I was Jesus. I didn't focus in on them at all. I focused mostly on Jesus. But this time, for some reason, I focused on Jesus, then I focused in on them. Sometimes people say, what did they look like? It's hard to describe people in heaven because there's no time. I tell people they were shiny, they had a big smile and pure joy. And then I thought later on, I said to myself, wow, I got to see my entire family in heaven smiling. And I thought, I've never seen that on the planet, and enjoying each other so much. I didn't know that family was like that in heaven. I thought we were all the family of God and we all would see each other and that would be the way it is. But you guys, the reality of it is family is important to God. And I came to understand that. There was people there that I didn't think would be there. I thought they didn't go to heaven because they didn't meet the criteria I had for them. They met God's criteria, but they didn't meet my criteria. And you say, what is God accepting Jesus Christ as Lord and Savior? You know, that's the criteria that God is asking. So here it is, you guys. My family comes to greet me in. Jesus downloads a lot of stuff in me. I get to experience what it's like to be in heaven and all of heaven coming together and praising and worshiping God. But after everything, all that, all of a sudden, Jesus looks at me again and he says with a command, strong command, no, it's not your time. Go back. I felt like all of creation that was in front of me moved out of the way and said, he's not talking about me. He's talking about you. I felt like a soldier. I used to be in the Air Force. I felt like a soldier. I felt like I went, yes, sir. That type of thing. And then I got ready to leave. I felt like he was saying, I need you there more than I need you here. That's what I felt like. He didn't say those words, but that's what I was feeling. That's what I was sensing. And my grandmother Mary's there, and she looks at me as he's saying this, and she says, bring as many of us back with you as you can. And she's talking about my entire family here on the planet Earth. So I bowed before Jesus like this, went over those trees again, got to what I call the edge of heaven, took a step, and I was out and headed back to this realm. And I was sad. I felt like a baby crying really hard. I remember coming into the hospital room, hovering over my bed where the body was. They had really stopped working on me and started putting things away. The doctor even said he was signing the death certificate at that time. And I remember, I don't know why I did this. I looked at my body, it was down there. I looked at it. I came in and hovered over it. And then I turned over and went into my body like that. And the doctor saw all of a sudden hit the heart monitor go beep, 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 beep. Started beeping. They started coming back over there. They intubated me, put the tube down my throat. You know what that's all about. They get me breathing again and all that type of stuff. I didn't really want to come back, but I felt like he was saying, I need you there more than I need you here. And how did I change? I look at things from an eternal point of view. I don't have the same grasp as I did before on things. And what I mean by that, holding on to things. It's not that I free to let them go, because I know we need them here on the planet. But if they go, I don't grieve over them. My wife could probably tell you more of the changes because she saw the difference in me. But that's the story. And there's a lot more I could say. But that's the story that I get to share with you. I hope you enjoyed it. I had a good time telling you.
Hello again, this is the Watchman. Please join us on our new video channel called Encounters from Beyond the Veil. It's the same exciting content as our audio podcast, but in a shorter, but yet a video format. Also, please subscribe so you won't miss any of our episodes. That's Encounters from Beyond the Veil, exclusively found on YouTube.
Well, thanks again for listening. And if you enjoyed this episode, please share it with your friends. Any comments or suggestions you may have, you can send to the Watchman on the Wall 2020 at gmail.com. We encourage you to subscribe so you'll always be notified of our future episodes. Well, thanks again, and we'll see you next time on the Watchman on the Wall podcast.